Prologue. The Curse of the Moon Goddess. In a time long forgotten, when the night sky was a canvas of untamed mystery and ancient magic, the Moon Goddess ruled over a world where destiny was not merely written, but fiercely waged. Beneath her silver gaze, the balance of power among the shapeshifters was forged in blood and whispers, and every soul carried a secret bond, a connection that tethered them to fate, whether they desired it or not. The legend tells of a celestial being with eyes that glimmered like molten stardust, whose presence could bend the very fabric of destiny. The Moon Goddess, in her boundless power, decreed the laws that governed the hearts and souls of werewolves, establishing the sacred, yet brutal mate bond. This bond was not a simple tie of affection. It was an inescapable contract of life, pain, and unyielding duty, binding mates together in a way that transcended time and choice. It was her way of ensuring that even in a realm teeming with strength and fury, every creature was reminded of its ultimate fragility before destiny's might. In the shadowed annals of this ancient lore, whispers of a curse echo, a curse so potent and mysterious that its mere mention sends shivers down the spines of those who dare to speak its name. The curse, as the fables say, was not a punishment wrought out of spite, but a necessary imbalance, a reminder that no soul was ever meant to tread the path of absolute freedom. For the Moon Goddess, even love had a price, and those who dared to defy the cosmic design would find themselves forever entangled in the web of fate. Centuries ago, in a realm where the forest's dark embrace met the heavens, a forsaken soul was marked by the goddess herself. Vivien, a name that would one day be etched into the chronicles of legend, was destined to bear the heavy burden of this curse. Born under a blood-red moon, her life was sealed with a bond both profound and tragic, a bond that promised unity, yet delivered torment. Though the creature within her was powerful, a fierce spirit that could light up the darkest nights, the curse rendered her existence a paradox of strength and sorrow. It was said that her mate bond, instead of being a symbol of mutual destiny, would become a catalyst for betrayal, a torment that would fracture her very essence. As the centuries passed, the secrets of the Moon Goddess's curse were passed down, through hushed tales and shadowed rituals. Each retelling carried the weight of inevitability, a solemn warning that those who dared to challenge fate might awaken a power far beyond their control. In the wild, uncharted expanses of the wolf territories, the curse lay dormant like a coiled serpent, waiting for the moment when its bite would alter the course of destiny. It was a force that bridged lives together, a mysterious tether that could bind hearts or shatter them into 1,000 irrevocable pieces. The ancient laws set by the Moon Goddess were uncompromising. They declared that every werewolf was inextricably linked to a mate bond, a mystical connection that was as indelible as it was ruthless. This bond was not merely a romantic ideal. It was an essential element of their being, a metaphysical contract that defined power, loyalty, and the unyielding nature of destiny. And yet for some like Vivien, this bond was a cruel twist of fate. In her life, it had taken on a perverse form, one where rejection and humiliation became the prelude to an even darker transformation. The curse was woven into the fabric of their world, a relentless reminder that destiny was not a matter of choice, but an edict of the cosmos. It whispered of inevitability in every rustle of leaves, in every howl that pierced the midnight silence. The Moon Goddess, with her enigmatic smile, had crafted a world where hope and despair danced in an eternal waltz. The power of the mate bond was both a blessing and a curse, a double-edged sword that could bestow unrivaled strength or inflict profound agony. Now, as the moon ascended in its full, radiant glory, its light spilling like liquid silver across the ancient lands, Vivien's fate began to stir from its long, oppressive slumber. The darkness of her past, laden with the bitter taste of betrayal and the weight of a curse she never asked for, was about to give way to a journey that promised both retribution and redemption. In this crucible of destiny, every choice, every heartbreak, and every act of defiance would reverberate through the ages, leaving an indelible mark on the legacy of the werewolves. The stage was set, and the lines had been drawn long before the first cry of a newborn wolf. In the realm of the supernatural, where love was as fierce as the battle cries that echoed through the forests, and where betrayal was as common as the stars in the sky, Vivien's path was now illuminated by the cold, unwavering light of destiny. The curse of the moon goddess loomed large, a silent specter that promised both doom and the chance to rise, a chance to reclaim a power that had been stolen by fate itself. Thus begins the tale of Vivien, a journey through the labyrinth of sorrow and triumph, where every step is measured by the relentless pulse of destiny, and every heartbeat is a defiant declaration against a curse that sought to bind her forever. The moonlight shimmers with ancient secrets, and as its light caresses the night, the promise of transformation and vengeance is whispered into the winds. In this haunting symphony of power and pain, the seeds of a new destiny are sown, and the world holds its breath in anticipation of the awakening that is about to shatter the chains of fate. Introduction. Vivien's life had always been defined by contrasts, moments of luminous hope intermingled with shadows of crushing despair. Once, she had dreamed of a destiny woven with love and acceptance, of finding solace in the arms of her destined mates. But that hope was brutally shattered in a single, fateful night. The rejection by Darius, Cassian, and Elias at the sacred mate ceremony had not only marked her as an outcast in the eyes of her pack, it had carved a deep wound into her soul, forever altering her path. Before that day, Vivien's world was a tapestry of whispered promises and unspoken dreams. Raised amidst the traditions of the werewolf realm, she had nurtured a secret longing for the unyielding bond that was meant to unite her with her perfect mate. Every heartbeat, every stolen glance under the watchful glow of the full moon, reinforced her belief in the cosmic design of mate bonds. Yet, the harsh reality of that night rendered those beliefs obsolete. In front of an audience of fierce warriors and skeptical elders, she was publicly humiliated, a symbol of failure, weakness, and unworthiness. The venomous words of rejection echoed in her mind, painting her as nothing more than an anomaly, a mistake within the intricate design of destiny. Now, in the wake of that devastating shattering of her dreams, Vivien stands at the threshold of an uncertain future. The once vibrant light in her eyes has dimmed, replaced by a simmering fire fueled by loss, anger, and a desperate hunger for redemption. Amidst the ruins of her former life, she contemplates the paradox of fate. How could a bond so sacred, so all-encompassing, be so cruelly revoked? The questions swirl in her mind, each one a spark igniting the embers of her resolve. Was she truly cursed to bear the burden of rejection? Or could this agony be the catalyst for a transformative resurgence? In the quiet solitude following her disgrace, Vivien begins to piece together a vision of revenge, a reawakening of a dormant power within her. The rejection, as searing as it was, has also revealed a glimpse of the true nature of destiny. It whispers of an untold strength, a hidden potential that could rise from the ashes of humiliation. The loss of her status as a mate is not the end, but rather the beginning of a journey that will challenge the very foundations of her world. Her heart, though scarred, pulses with the promise of change, a promise that she will reclaim her identity, reshape her fate, and defy the harsh decrees that once bound her. As the moonlight filters through the remnants of shattered dreams, Vivien stands resolute, ready to embark on a path fraught with peril and profound transformation. The questions of destiny, the meaning of rejection, and the possibility of rebirth hang in the air like an unspoken oath. What will become of her in a world that seems determined to erase her very existence? And can a heart once broken learn to beat anew with the fierce rhythm of defiance? The answers lie hidden in the labyrinth of fate, waiting to be unveiled as her journey of revenge and self-discovery unfolds. A journey that promises to upend everything she thought she knew about. Love, power, and the unbreakable bond of destiny. Chapter 1. Fateful Rejection. The cold night air was heavy with anticipation, as Vivien stepped into the grand hall of the Silver Fong Pack. Under the pale luminescence of the full moon, every eye in the room seemed to fix upon her. A solitary figure destined to be broken by the cruel judgment of fate. The hall, filled with snarling warriors and stoic elders, was a stage set for a ritual that had long been steeped in both hope and terror, the mate ceremony. Vivien's heart pounded like a war drum in her chest as she approached the center of the hall. Each step felt as if it carried the weight of centuries of expectation, a promise of union that had been whispered into the very bones of her kind. Yet, beneath that promise lurked a silent dread, for she had always sensed that something within her was different. Tonight, that difference would be made manifest before all. As the ceremony commenced, the atmosphere grew charged with an eerie stillness. The pack's leaders, clad in ceremonial regalia, began to intone the ancient rites that bound mates together, a sacred ritual that was meant to celebrate love, strength, and destiny. Vivien's eyes shone with a mix of hope and trepidation, as she awaited the moment when her soul's counterpart would reach out and claim her. Instead, she was met with something far more devastating. One by one, the 3 names were pronounced. Darius, with his raven black hair and piercing green eyes, was the first. His gaze, sharp and disdainful, swept over Vivien as though she were a repulsive stain on the purity of their bloodline. "You," he spat, his voice cold and unforgiving, "are unworthy. A disgrace." His words cut through the silence like a knife, each syllable a brutal rebuke that seared into her heart. The crowd's murmurs turned into a cacophony of bitter laughter, echoing off stone walls and shattering the fragile hope that had flickered in her chest. Next came Cashin, his blue eyes flashing with derision as he regarded her with nothing but contempt. With a dismissive gesture, he echoed Darius's sentiment. A mate is meant to be a strength, not a burden. How could the moon goddess have been so foolish? The laughter that followed was like a wave crashing over her, drowning her in humiliation. It was not merely the words themselves, but the collective scorn of those gathered. A public spectacle of her inadequacy that left no room for comfort or solace. Then, as if the blow of the first 2 rejections were not enough, Elias's quiet, almost imperceptible voice joined in the chorus of disgrace. Standing a little apart from the others, his dark brown eyes were devoid of any empathy. His tone was so muted that it almost went unnoticed, yet its impact was no less devastating. "You are not our mate," he whispered, a phrase that resonated with finality and despair. The simplicity of his rejection was a merciless verdict, stripping away any remnants of dignity or hope that Vivien had once clung to. In that agonizing moment, time seemed to freeze. The ritual, once a beacon of destiny, had transformed into a crucible of pain. Every whisper, every sneer, every scornful laugh from the pack reverberated in her mind, echoing the terrible truth. She was an outcast. The mate bond, that mystical connection meant to seal love and unity, had been shattered before it even had a chance to ignite. The words reject and disgrace burned like wildfire across her skin, leaving scars that would never fade. Vivien felt as if the very essence of her being was being dismantled, piece by piece. The shock of rejection was more than a simple denial of her destiny. It was a profound violation of everything she had ever believed about herself. Every insult, every derisive laugh from the pack's members dug deeper into her soul, transforming hope into a bitter concoction of anger, sorrow, and betrayal. As the final echoes of the ceremony faded, the hall remained enveloped in a palpable silence, a silence that was as deafening as the collective judgment that had been passed upon her. With trembling hands and a shattered heart, Vivien turned away from the accusing gazes of those who deemed her unworthy. Her steps, once filled with tentative hope, now became frantic and desperate. The weight of the pack's scorn was too unbearable to remain, and she fled into the night without a backward glance. Outside, under the indifferent gaze of the moon, Vivien's tears mingled with the cold night rain. Each drop that fell was a testament to the cruelty of that fateful evening, a silent acknowledgement of the life she had lost, the life where she had dared to dream of love and belonging. The forest swallowed her as she ran, its ancient trees standing as silent witnesses to her despair. In that overwhelming darkness, the seeds of a new resolve began to take root. The rejection that had once threatened to crush her spirit now ignited a fierce determination within. Though the pain was profound and the humiliation raw, it marked the beginning of an unexpected journey, a journey of self-discovery, of retribution, and ultimately, of transformation. Vivien's path would no longer be defined by the cruelty of others, but by the strength she found in her own resilience. As she disappeared into the shadowed embrace of the wilderness, a single, unyielding thought echoed in her mind. This was not the end. It was merely the first step on a road paved with hardship, betrayal, and ultimately, the promise of a power reborn. And in that realization, even as her heart broke and her soul ached, a spark of defiance began to glow, an ember that would, one day, blaze into a fire capable of reshaping destiny itself. Chapter 2. The Emergence of the Nightshade. The moon hung low, draping the border between known territory and the wild, untamed lands in an eerie silver glow. As Vivien staggered into the dense forest, the echo of her painful rejection still throbbed within her, each step heavy with despair and raw determination. The chill of the night did little to cool the fire burning inside her, a fire kindled by humiliation and fueled by a desperate need for redemption. It was here, amidst ancient, towering trees and the whispers of unseen creatures, that fate wove its next twist. At the edge of the forest, where shadows danced with the faint light of a distant campfire, a presence stirred. Vivien paused, every instinct screaming that she was no longer alone. A figure emerged from the darkness, his silhouette carved sharply against the muted light. There was an air of power in his stance, a quiet dominance that commanded both respect and fear. Killian Blackwood. His name, whispered in hushed legends among the pack, was spoken with reverence and trepidation in equal measure. As he stepped into view, his presence transformed the desolate clearing into a stage set for destiny. Tall and imposing, Killian's dark hair fell in unruly waves, framing a face that was both rugged and enigmatic. His eyes, a piercing shade of silver, held a storm of emotions, a mix of authority, pain, and a secret promise that resonated deep within Vivien's soul. For a moment, time seemed to pause. The soft rustle of leaves and the distant murmur of nocturnal creatures were all that punctuated the silence as their gazes locked. Vivien could feel the raw, palpable tension in the air, a magnetic pull that defied the cold night. It was as though the universe itself had conspired to draw them together in this liminal space, where the past and future collided in a silent, dramatic ballet. Killian's voice, low and measured, finally broke the stillness. "You've wandered far from the Silver Fong lands," he said, each word heavy with unspoken meaning. There was no mockery in his tone, only an understanding that went beyond words, a recognition of the deep wounds that scarred her spirit. His gaze, unwavering and intense, seemed to see right through her, piercing the layers of despair and doubt that had taken root after that fateful rejection. Vivien, still trembling from her ordeal, managed to muster a reply, her voice barely above a whisper. I have no home now. They rejected me. Every word, every laugh, it still burns." Her confession, raw and unfiltered, hung in the air like a bitter incantation. In that vulnerable moment, she offered him a glimpse into the depths of her pain, a pain so profound, it seemed to have the power to reshape her very destiny. A faint, almost imperceptible smile curved Killian's lips as he stepped closer, the flames of the nearby campfire reflecting in his eyes. Rejection can be the beginning of something greater, Vivien. A rebirth, even. You have been cast aside, but in the shadows, a new order rises. A world where strength is forged through adversity. His words, though gentle, carried an undeniable promise. It was not merely an offer of solace. It was an invitation to reclaim the power that had been unjustly stripped from her. As the night deepened, Killian's presence grew even more magnetic. He revealed that he was the leader of the Nightshade Pack, a faction known not only for its fierce independence, but also for its ability to harness the raw, untamed energy of the night. In his world, the ancient laws of the mate bond were not absolute. Instead, they were challenged by those who dared to defy fate and carve their own path. His words were a stark contrast to the cruelty Vivien had endured, a promise of protection, strength, and an opportunity for revenge against those who had scorned her. "Join me," Killian continued, his voice a blend of command and allure, "and together we will reshape our destiny. I offer you not just refuge from the cold judgment of your past, but a chance to wield power. Power that will turn the tables on those who deemed you unworthy." There was an intensity in his tone that made it clear he was not merely extending a hand in sympathy, but proposing a pact, a union that would harness the energy of their shared pain and transform it into a weapon of retribution. In the silence that followed, Vivien felt the weight of his words settle into her like a spark waiting to ignite a long-dormant flame. The Nightshade Pack was a place where the rules were rewritten, where the outcasts could rise and challenge the very order that had once condemned them. It was a promise of liberation from the constraints of destiny, a chance to transform her, anguish into a driving force for change. For the first time since that cruel ceremony, Vivien sensed a flicker of hope amid the darkness. As she looked into Killian's unwavering silver gaze, she realized that this meeting was not a coincidence. It was a pivotal moment in a journey that would redefine her existence. The rejection that had once shattered her had now paved the way for a resurgence, a transformation that would echo through the very fabric of her world. In that tense, charged encounter, the past and future merged. The ghosts of humiliation faded into the background as the promise of a new beginning beckoned. With Killian's outstretched hand, the path forward was illuminated, a path marked by courage, defiance, and the relentless pursuit of justice. And so, in the midst of an unforgiving night, under the watchful eyes of ancient trees and the silent witness of the stars, Vivien found herself at the precipice of a destiny that promised to reclaim not only her honor, but her very soul. Chapter 3. Rising Vengeance. In the aftermath of that brutal night, the echoes of humiliation and rejection still rang in Vivien's ears. The cold solitude of the forest, once a refuge from the jeers of the Silver Fang Pack, now bore witness to a transformation that was slowly taking root deep within her wounded soul. Every step away from the hall was a step toward an unknown destiny, one where the bitterness of her scars would ferment into a potent drive for revenge. As dawn began, to brush the horizon with muted colors, Vivien found herself alone with her thoughts. The shock of her public shaming had receded, replaced by a swirling storm of emotions that she could no longer deny. Grief mingled with anger. Despair clashed with a burgeoning determination. In the quiet moments before the light fully broke, she revisited the images of that fateful ceremony, Darius's cold dismissal, Cashin's sneer, and Elias's whispered finality. Each memory was a jagged shard of glass pressed against her heart, yet, paradoxically, they also kindled a fire within her. Sitting on a fallen log beneath the towering pines, Vivien allowed herself to feel the full force of her pain. The memories were relentless. Each bitter word, every mocking laugh, every scornful glance. They painted her past in strokes of agony and betrayal. But as the hours passed and the forest stirred with the sound of life awakening, a subtle yet undeniable shift occurred within her. In the solitude of nature, among the gentle rustling of leaves and the soft chirp of birds, she began to see the painful moments not as the end of her story, but as the fuel for a new beginning. A surge of adrenaline reminded her that she was still alive, a fact that now took on a fierce significance. Every heartbeat was a defiant drum, urging her to reclaim the dignity that had been so cruelly snatched away. The pain, though it still throbbed with each breath, began to metamorphose into something far more potent: vengeance. Vivien's mind swirled with thoughts of retribution. How could those who had so shamelessly spurned her, those who had declared her unworthy, ever imagine that she would rise again? The idea was both intoxicating and terrifying, a challenge thrown down by fate itself. In that silent communion with the wild, Vivien's inner voice grew louder, echoing through the hollows of her shattered self. "No more," it whispered, firm and unyielding. "I will not be defined by your scorn. I will reclaim what was stolen from me, the power, the pride, and the promise of my destiny." The clarity of this resolve was like a beam of light cutting through the lingering shadows of her past. It was then that the first seed of a radical decision took root. She would step out of the darkness of rejection and forge a path toward her own reawakening. The journey ahead would be fraught with challenges, but Vivien recognized that within every trial lay an opportunity to harness her inner strength. Each tear she had shed, every moment of despair, was not a sign of weakness, but a precursor to the formidable warrior she was destined to become. The anguish of that night, once a shackle binding her to a legacy of disgrace, would instead serve as the crucible in which her new self was forged. It was not merely about avenging the past. It was about reshaping her future, about proving that she was more than the sum of her scars. Vivien rose from her makeshift sanctuary with a renewed vigor. The forest, with its ancient secrets and timeless resilience, seemed to whisper words of encouragement. The rustling leaves and the distant call of a lone wolf formed a symphony that resonated with her newfound determination. Every step forward was now a promise, a vow that she would no longer be a victim of fate, but an active force in rewriting her own story. Her heart pounded with the rhythm of rebellion as she envisioned a future where she stood tall, her spirit unbroken, wielding her pain as a weapon against those who had once derided her. In her mind's eye, Vivien saw the faces of those who had betrayed her. Their disdain was no longer a source of torment, but a mirror reflecting the injustice they had sown, a reminder of why she must rise. With each passing moment, the desire for justice grew stronger, intertwining with an even deeper longing for self-empowerment. This was not just about retribution. It was about restoring her honor and, in the process, redefining the very essence of her identity. In the weeks that followed, Vivien embarked on a solitary journey through the vast wilderness, seeking not only physical solace but also a mental and emotional rebirth. The harsh landscapes became her training ground. Every rough terrain, every bitter chill of the night, was a lesson in resilience. She pushed her body and mind to their limits, embracing the hardships as necessary trials on the path to transformation. Slowly, with each stride and each moment of introspection, the wounds of the past began to close, replaced by a burgeoning strength and a steely resolve. Her solitary wanderings led her to encounters with elders of the wild, whose cryptic words hinted at ancient powers and forgotten truths about the mate bond. In those brief, enlightening moments, Vivien learned that her suffering was not an isolated curse, but part of a grand tapestry woven by destiny, a tapestry that now offered her the chance to alter its design. The seed of vengeance that had sprouted in her heart was nurtured by these revelations, turning into a promise of liberation from the chains of her past. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon once again, painting the sky in hues of fire and shadow, Vivien had embraced her destiny with unwavering conviction. No longer would she allow the echoes of rejection to dictate her future. With the pain of yesterday serving as the forge for her spirit, she vowed to rise as a force to be reckoned with, ready to reclaim her honor, exact her revenge, and transform her shattered past into a beacon of strength that would illuminate the darkness for all those who had ever been forsaken. Chapter 4. Revelation of the Bond. Under a sky dappled with shifting shadows and a reluctant dawn, Vivien found herself standing at the crossroads of her own destiny. The searing pain of rejection still pulsed in her veins, yet an inexplicable pull, both haunting and profound, tugged at the depths of her soul. It was as if the very essence of her being refused to let go of a connection that had been forcibly etched into her fate. In the solitude of her hidden refuge, far from the jeering echoes of the Silver Fong pack, Vivien began to sense an undercurrent in the silence, a familiar warmth that pulsed like a heartbeat. At first, she dismissed it as a lingering phantom of the past, a cruel reminder of the humiliation she had endured. But as days turned to nights and her solitude deepened, the sensation grew stronger, taking on a life of its own. It whispered to her in dreams and flickered at the edge of her waking thoughts, a bond that transcended the physical, defying the brutal rejection she had faced. One night, as the moon hung heavy in the ink-black sky, Vivien sat cross-legged beneath an ancient oak. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and forgotten memories. In that sacred stillness, she closed her eyes, determined to confront the mysteries that haunted her. The pain and the rage that once threatened to consume her now merged, with a curious sense of longing, an acknowledgement that some part of her remained inexplicably tethered to the trio who had scorned her. In the depths of her meditation, a vision burst forth, a cascade of fragmented images that seemed both foreign and achingly familiar. She saw Darius, his piercing green eyes now filled not just with disdain, but with an agonizing conflict. Cassian, whose dismissive sneer was replaced by a look of bitter regret. And Elias, whose quiet rejection carried an undercurrent of sorrow. The trio, once heralded as her destined mates, now appeared as tormented souls, grappling with a force they could neither sever nor fully embrace. As the vision sharpened, Vivien's heart pounded with the startling realization. Despite their public denials, the mystical mate bond between them and herself still endured, mutated and twisted by a curse that defied the natural order. It was as if the rejection had not broken the connection, but rather had set it aflame in a way that transformed its very nature. The bond was no longer a simple promise of unity, but a volatile tether that could wound as deeply as it could empower. Questions swirled in her mind like a storm. How could the rejection have failed to dissolve the sacred link? Was it the moon, goddess's cruel irony that ensured no bond once forged could ever be completely undone? And more haunting still, what did this mean for her freedom, for her will to control her own destiny? The answers lay hidden in the cryptic whispers of ancient lore, but one truth shone clear. Destiny was a force far more intricate than the pack's rigid rituals could ever comprehend. The vision faded, leaving Vivien with the taste of bittersweet revelation on her tongue. The cursed bond, she now understood, was not merely a shackle to be broken. It was an indelible part of her essence, one that intertwined her fate with those who had once rejected her. This transformation was not accidental. It was the result of a primordial curse decreed by the moon goddess, a decree meant to ensure that even in rejection, a remnant of connection would persist, echoing through the soul like a haunting melody. That moment of clarity, Vivien felt the eternal conflict between destiny and free will surge within her. The bond, though a relic of a rejected promise, was a constant reminder that the forces governing her life were both immutable and malleable. The curse served as a cruel paradox, a gift and a burden simultaneously. It bound her to a fate she had never chosen, yet it also held the key to unlocking powers hidden deep within her spirit. Determined to reclaim her autonomy, Vivien resolved to delve deeper into the mystery of the mate bond. She would seek out, The ancient texts and hidden seers whose cryptic prophecies had long alluded to a time when such bonds could be transformed, if not entirely undone. Her journey now took on a dual purpose: to harness the volatile energy of this twisted connection for her own empowerment, and to confront the age-old question of whether one could ever truly escape the designs of destiny. As the first light of dawn began to creep over the horizon, casting long shadows across the dew-kissed ground, Vivien rose with a steely determination. The revelations of that night had kindled a fierce resolve within her, a resolve to master the forces that bound her, and, in doing so, to forge a new path forward. The cursed bond was not her prison, but her battleground, where the relentless struggle between fate and free will would be waged. In the quiet after the storm of her revelations, Vivien's heart, once shattered by public rejection, now beat with the rhythm of rebellion and hope. She knew the road ahead would be treacherous, marked by challenges that would test every fiber of her being. Yet, with each pulse of her defiant heart, she embraced the uncertainty, ready to confront the legacy of the curse and to rise above the limitations imposed by a fate she refused to accept. Thus, with the weight of ancient magic pressing against her every step, Vivien set out to reclaim not only her freedom, but her very soul. The battle between destiny and choice had only just begun, and she was determined to be the one who would ultimately rewrite the rules. Chapter 5. The web of lies and betrayal. Under a sky heavy with foreboding clouds, the path of destiny became tangled in a labyrinth of deceit. Vivien's journey had led her to a hidden enclave deep within the forest, a place where the echoes of old promises and whispered conspiracies converged in the cold night air. Here, amid the flicker of torches and the murmurs of secretive voices, the true extent of betrayal began to unfurl. Vivien's steps were tentative as she approached the clandestine meeting spot, a clearing encircled by ancient oaks that seemed to guard the dark secrets of the past. The atmosphere was thick with tension, every rustle of leaves and distant sound of footsteps heightening her senses. She had come seeking answers about the cursed bond, but what she found was far more complex, a web of lies spun by those closest to her fate. As she entered the clearing, two figures emerged from the shadows. An elder seer, whose eyes glowed with the wisdom of countless lifetimes, and a scarred warrior with an inscrutable expression. Their presence signified that the hidden truths were about to be revealed. The elder, speaking in a voice that trembled with both sorrow and resolve, began, "Vivien, the truth you seek is not one of simple sorrow. It is the product of betrayal, manipulation, and promises broken long ago." Before she could demand further details, the scarred warrior stepped forward. "You trusted too easily," he said, his tone laced with bitter regret. "The moon goddess, the sacred pact you believed in, was never meant to bind us as you thought. It was a tool, a means to control and manipulate our destinies. Your rejection was only the beginning of a greater betrayal." The words struck Vivien like a physical blow. In that moment, memories of the mate ceremony, the cold dismissal, the scornful laughs, the pointed words, were transformed. They were no longer the simple rejections of a broken ritual, but calculated moves in a far more sinister game. The revelations began to intertwine with painful recollections of promises that had been whispered in the quiet moments before the ceremony, promises that dissolved into shadows when the truth was demanded. Vivien's mind raced as the elder continued. Long ago, the moon goddess devised this intricate system. She planted the seed of the mate bond to unite our kind, but also to keep us under her sway. Every rejection, every bond that seemed to shatter, was but part of a design to ensure that no one could ever truly break free from her control. His words carried the weight of an ancient curse and the sting of treachery. Your pain, your betrayal. It was all orchestrated to keep you in a perpetual state of yearning, always questioning your worth and your destiny. The scarred warrior's eyes burned with a mix of fury and pity as he turned to Vivien. "I was there when promises were made and broken," he admitted, his voice cracking with emotion. "I witnessed the moon goddess manipulate those you loved, twist their loyalties, and bind you with a curse that refuses to die. The rejection you endured was not because you were unworthy, but because they were all ensnared in her web of lies." His words revealed a network of deceit that stretched far beyond the public humiliation she had suffered, a betrayal woven into the fabric of the pack, orchestrated by powers beyond mortal control. In the charged silence that followed, Vivien's eyes welled with both sorrow and burning resolve. "Who among them has deceived me? Who has truly forsaken their bond with me?" she demanded, her voice a tremulous blend of anguish and determination. The elder's gaze met hers, and he replied, "The answer lies not in a single face, but in the collective treachery of those who once vowed to protect you. They have all played their part. Each word of rejection a calculated step in a grand, designed to keep you shackled to your fate." As the revelation sunk in, the clearing seemed to darken further, the oppressive atmosphere mirroring the turmoil within her soul. A cold wind swept through the trees, carrying with it the echoes of forgotten oaths and silent cries for justice. It was as if the very air around her was charged with the remnants of broken trust and unfulfilled promises. Before Vivien could process the full magnitude of the betrayal, a sudden harsh voice cut through the gloom. "So, you finally learn the truth, Vivien." The voice belonged to none other than Darius, whose earlier disdain now seemed twisted by something far more sinister, a mixture of regret, jealousy, and lingering power. He emerged from the darkness, flanked by figures who had once been her mates, their expressions marred by inner conflict and unspoken remorse. Darius's eyes bore into hers as he declared, "We were never as free as you believed. The bond we share, the curse that binds us, is a tool of the moon goddess, and we, each of us, are complicit in her grand deception." His words, laden with bitterness, hung in the air like a challenge, igniting a spark of defiance within Vivien. In that electrifying moment, surrounded by those who had once betrayed her and bound her in chains of fate, Vivien realized that her journey was only beginning. The web of lies and betrayal had ensnared everyone, and the path to liberation would demand choices that no heart could easily make. As the night deepened, and the voices of the betrayers and the betrayed mingled in a cacophony of accusation and regret, a single question remained unspoken, hovering on the edge of a knife. Could she ever break free from the destiny that had been so meticulously woven by forces far greater than herself? With her heart pounding in her ears and a fire of vengeance igniting in her soul, Vivien stood at the precipice of a new, perilous chapter. One where the truth was as dangerous as it was liberating, and where every step forward promised to unravel more secrets than she had ever dared to imagine. Chapter 6. Clash of Fate. Under a sky churned with ominous clouds and the roar of an impending storm, the stage was set for an all-out confrontation that would shake the very foundations of destiny. The Nightshade Pack, once a hidden refuge, for the defiant and the outcast, now prepared to face an enemy far greater than any individual betrayal. A coalition of forces that had long manipulated fate from the shadows. The air vibrated with tension as nightfall descended, cloaking the forest in an eerie darkness punctuated by flashes of lightning. In a clearing marked by ancient gnarled trees, warriors from both sides gathered. The unmistakable symbols of the Nightshade Pack glowed faintly on armor and talismans, while opposing forces, twisted by their allegiance to the capricious moon, goddess and the old order, stood in stark, menacing contrast. Their eyes burned with fanaticism and the hunger for control, each determined to enforce their version of destiny. Vivien, standing at the heart of the battleground, felt her pulse race in time with the distant thunder. The revelations of lies, betrayal, and the cursed bond had forged within her a steely resolve. But now, As she surveyed the enemy forces, conflicting emotions surged like a tidal wave. Anger, sorrow, and even a spark of regret for what once was collided within her, fueling the inner conflict that had defined her journey so far. Yet amidst the chaos, one thought burned fiercely in her mind. This was her moment to reclaim her destiny. The first clash erupted as a barrage of primal roars, and the clash of steel shattered the silence. Nightshade warriors surged forward, their movements a blend of fluid grace and ruthless aggression, honed by years of defying fate's chains. Against them, the manipulative forces, wielding ancient arcane power granted by the moon goddess, answered with an onslaught of enchanted strikes and bitter curses. The ground trembled under the weight of the conflict, as light and shadow intertwined in a violent dance. In the midst of the melee, Vivien found herself locked in combat with a former ally, a warrior whose eyes now held the cruel glint of unwavering loyalty to the old order. Their blades met in a shower of sparks, each strike laden with not only physical force but also the heavy burden of past friendship turned sour. "You've forsaken our bond," the warrior spat, voice thick with bitter betrayal. "You dare defy the fate we once embraced?" The words stung, echoing the pain of old wounds even as they fueled her determination. Vivien's reply was swift, a counterstrike that blended calculated fury with the agony of lost trust. And in that moment, the battle transformed into a microcosm of the larger war, a struggle between the chains of destiny and the fierce desire for autonomy. All around her, the battlefield became a living tapestry of clashing wills and unresolved grudges. Warriors who had once shared intimate bonds now faced each other with eyes full of resentment and questions of loyalty. The moon goddess's influence was palpable, her unseen hand twisting events, ensuring that every blow and parry was imbued with a deeper, cosmic significance. Each combatant was not just fighting for victory, but for the right to define their own fate, a right that seemed to hang precariously in the balance, as the old order sought to reassert its control. As the battle raged, unexpected alliances began to form. Some among the opposing forces, previously enforcers of fate's rigid design, started to waver as the realization dawned upon them. The manipulative chains of the moon goddess had bound them all, whether they wished it or not. In a sudden, breathtaking moment of clarity amid the chaos, a group of dissenters broke ranks. Their eyes met Vivien's across the tumult, and in that unspoken communion, a new alliance was born, a coalition of those willing to fight for a future free from predestined chains. In the midst of this shifting tide, Killian Blackwood emerged like a dark sentinel, his presence reasserting order among the Nightshade pack. With a voice that resonated above the clamor of battle, he rallied his warriors. "This night is not for the meek. We rise against those who would dictate our fate." His words ignited a fervor that swept across the clearing, bolstering the spirits of his comrades and infusing them with the courage to defy the old world. Yet even as his command cut through the tumult, a subtle change flickered in his eyes, a mixture of concern and regret that hinted at deeper complexities in his own struggle. For Vivien, every parry and thrust in the frenzied melee was not just a fight for survival, but a battle for her very identity. The clash was a manifestation of her inner turmoil, the fierce resistance to being defined by a cursed bond and the oppressive will of a predetermined destiny. With each enemy that fell, before her, the agony of past betrayals was slowly transmuted into a burning desire for liberation. Her heart pounded, not only with the adrenaline of combat, but with the hope that, through this violent upheaval, she could finally forge a future that belonged solely to her. As the night deepened, the struggle reached a fever pitch. The relentless onslaught of mystical forces and physical might created a chaotic symphony of power and defiance. In the heart of the storm, the relationships between allies and adversaries shifted unexpectedly. Former foes found common ground against a shared enemy, and the lines between betrayal and redemption blurred. The battlefield became an arena where the ancient dictates of fate were questioned, where every life lost and every scar earned testified to the possibility of rewriting destiny itself. In a final, breathtaking moment, just as the battle teetered on the brink of overwhelming despair, a decisive blow turned the tide. A surge of rebellious energy, fueled by Vivien's unyielding will, rippled across the combatants, leaving them frozen in a moment of stunned silence. The clash of fate had reached its zenith, leaving all who bore witness hanging in the balance. And as the echoes of that monumental confrontation faded into the night, one burning question remained unanswered. What new future would rise from the ruins of this shattered destiny? Chapter 7. Sacrifice and Transformation. The night after the fierce clash, when the world seemed to be holding its breath between victory and despair, Vivien found herself alone at the edge of a ruined clearing. The remnants of battle lay scattered. Around her, broken weapons, tattered banners, and the lingering echoes of lost lives. Amid this desolation, a deeper struggle raged within her heart, one that would redefine her very essence. In that cold, silent aftermath, Vivien realized that, to break free from the chains of accursed destiny, she would have to pay a price greater than any physical wound. The bitter sting of rejection and betrayal had left her feeling fractured, yet beneath the pain lay an ember of determination waiting to be kindled. She knew that to reclaim her power and reshape her future, she must sacrifice something dear, a piece of her past, a shard of the self that had been so ruthlessly defined by others' scorn. Under the pallid glow of the moon, Vivien retreated to a secluded grove, where the ancient trees whispered secrets of transformation and renewal. Here, in the solitude of nature's embrace, she prepared for the ritual of sacrifice that would sever the oppressive bond imposed by fate. The ritual was not one of mere magic. It was a journey into the depths of her soul, a test of her willingness to let go of what once defined her. In her trembling hands, she clutched a locket that had belonged to her mother, a relic of a past filled with gentle love and hope, now tainted by memories of ridicule and loss. It was a symbol of the girl she once was, fragile and longing for acceptance. With a voice steadying despite the quake of emotion, Vivien spoke an invocation to the ancient forces that had governed her world for centuries. "I surrender this piece of my past so that I may be reborn," she declared, her words echoing through the silent grove. As the locket slipped from her grasp, it landed with a soft thud against the cold, moss-covered earth. In that moment, the weight of her old identity began to dissipate, replaced by an intense, burning clarity. The locket's fall signified the end of her time as the rejected, the forsaken, a farewell to the part of her that had been mired in sorrow and self-doubt. Pain mingled with an exhilarating sense of liberation. Vivien felt as though every tear she had shed and every bitter word of rejection had been distilled into this single act of sacrifice. The agony of letting go was immense, as if a piece of her soul was being carved out and cast into oblivion. Yet, with each heartbeat, she sensed a transformation unfolding, a metamorphosis born from the crucible of suffering and sacrifice. As the night deepened, a soft wind began to swirl around her, carrying with it murmurs of ancient power and promises of renewal. In that ethereal moment, Vivien's vision blurred, and the forest around her seemed to pulse with a living, transformative energy. It was as if the very essence of nature was reaching out, cradling her in a cocoon of light and shadow. In that divine embrace, she felt the presence of something greater, a force that both mourned the loss of her old self and celebrated the birth of a new, indomitable spirit. Within her, the remnants of pain and despair coalesced into a radiant flame of determination. No longer would she be defined by the cruelty of rejection or the suffocating grip of a cursed bond. Instead, she would emerge as a symbol of power, living testament to the strength that comes from embracing one's scars. The ritual of sacrifice had not obliterated her identity. It had purified it, leaving behind a core of resilience and defiance. In the quiet aftermath of her transformation, Vivien looked down at her hands, feeling the tangible warmth of the energy coursing through her. Each pulse was a declaration, a promise that from this day forth she would command her destiny with unwavering resolve. The once vulnerable girl, marked by humiliation and loss, had given way to a warrior forged in the fires of sacrifice. Her eyes, now glistening with a mix of sorrow and fierce determination, shone like polished amber, reflecting the inner strength that had been awakened. Her thoughts swirled with memories of the harsh moments that had led her here. The laughter that had mocked her at the mate ceremony, the venomous words of betrayal, and the cold indifference of those she once called mates. Each memory, painful as it was, had played a role in shaping the woman she was becoming. And now, with the shackles of her past broken, a newfound clarity emerged. Vivien knew that the path ahead would be treacherous, a relentless battle against forces that sought to bind her to a predetermined fate, but she was ready. The sacrifice had liberated not just her spirit, but also the potential to harness the very curse that had once defined her. As the first rays of dawn began to pierce the horizon, the grove transformed into a sanctuary of hope and renewal. The mist lifted to reveal a world that was both familiar and startlingly new, mirroring the internal rebirth she had undergone. Vivien stood tall, her silhouette bathed in the soft golden light of a promising future. The pain of yesterday still lingered like distant memories, yet it no longer held the power to dictate her destiny. With a final, resolute breath, she whispered to the awakening sky, "I am reborn." In that single, transformative moment, Vivien embraced her destiny. A destiny that was hers to shape, free from the chains of past betrayals. The sacrifice had not been an end, but the beginning of a journey, where every scar would serve as a reminder of her strength, and every step forward would echo with the promise of a future rewritten by her own will. Chapter 8. Unraveling of the Past. Under the gentle glow of twilight, Vivien found herself drawn to a secluded glen, where the whispering wind seemed to carry echoes of a forgotten era. In this quiet sanctuary, the veil between the present and the past grew thin, inviting her to delve into memories long buried beneath the weight of pain and betrayal. As she closed her eyes, fragments of her history began to coalesce into vivid flashbacks, each one a crucial piece in the puzzle of her destiny. In her first vision, the world shifted to an age when the moon goddess ruled unchallenged over a realm of mystic power and eternal night. Vivien saw a younger version of herself, not yet marred by rejection or despair, basking in the gentle radiance of a full moon. In that luminous moment, she recalled the tender, almost sacred rites of her people, time when the mate bond was celebrated as a divine connection, a promise of unity and strength. But alongside these gentle images, darker scenes emerged. There were whispers of forbidden rituals, secret pacts made under the gaze of the moon goddess, where the threads of fate were woven with deliberate cruelty. One such flashback revealed the origin of the cursed mate bond. Vivien saw the moon goddess herself, her eyes glimmering with a blend of sorrow and detached authority, decreeing that every werewolf would be bound by an unbreakable tether, a connection meant to secure the stability of their kind. However, this decree came with a sinister caveat. Should the bond ever be severed by the hands of betrayal or rejection, it would not simply dissolve, but would instead twist into a force of relentless torment. The scene pulsed with an unsettling energy as the goddess's voice echoed, "No bond once formed may be undone, for it is the essence of our fate." The weight of that eternal edict pressed down on the young Vivien, planting the seeds of a destiny that would be both her blessing and her curse. As the flashbacks wove together, more intimate details of her personal past began to surface. Vivien recalled moments of fragile hope, the tender promises made in hushed tones by those who were meant to be her mates. There was the gleam of expectation in their eyes, the warmth of their words, and the unspoken oath of loyalty that had, at that time, seemed to secure her place among them. But these memories were shattered by the betrayal that had unfolded during the fateful mate ceremony. The vivid recollection of her public rejection now revealed a deeper, more calculated deception. It was not a mere lapse of judgment or a simple act of cruelty. It was part of a larger design, orchestrated by the manipulative forces of the moon goddess herself. In one of the more jarring flashbacks, Vivien found herself standing before a council of ancient seers, wise elders whose cryptic prophecies had once promised a future of unity and prosperity. Instead, their eyes were clouded with regret and forewarning. They spoke in hushed tones about a hidden imbalance, a flaw in the sacred ritual that was destined to twist the mate bond into an instrument of control. Their words painted a picture of a legacy marred by broken promises and the deliberate manipulation of fate. "We foresaw the day," one seer murmured, his voice laden with sorrow, "when a chosen one would rise, only to be burdened by a curse that would defy the very essence of free will." These murmurs left Vivien with an unsettling realization. Her suffering was not an isolated tragedy, but a symptom of a cosmic design, a design that had condemned her and many others to a life of perpetual conflict between destiny and desire. Each revelation deepened her inner turmoil, stirring a cauldron of conflicting emotions. On one hand, there was the bitter pain of betrayal, the memory of those who had turned their backs on her, leaving her to bear the crushing weight of a manipulated fate. On the other, a growing sense of purpose emerged from the chaos. With every recalled detail, Vivien began to understand that the curse was not merely a force of oppression. It was also a challenge, a gauntlet thrown down by the moon goddess, daring her to reclaim her autonomy. The fragmented visions painted a broader picture of a destiny woven from both light and shadow, suggesting that the key to her liberation lay in embracing the entirety of her past, even the parts that pained her most. As the final vestiges of these flashbacks faded, Vivien opened her eyes to a night sky scattered with stars, each one a silent witness to the ancient truths now slowly unraveling within her. The secrets of the past, of the divine decree, the sacrificial rituals, and the deliberate betrayals, had begun to form a coherent narrative. Yet, unanswered questions remained, swirling like mist in the early hours of dawn. Who among her former mates had truly understood the weight of the bond? Could the twisted fate imposed upon her be challenged, or was it an inescapable destiny crafted by forces beyond mortal ken? With the mysteries of her past laid bare, Vivien felt a renewed determination stirring within her. The revelation of these hidden truths was not an end in itself, but a precursor to a larger confrontation, a confrontation with the very forces that had dictated her life for so long. The pieces of the puzzle hinted at deeper conflicts, internal and external, that would shape the course of her journey in the days to come. And as she stood beneath the vast expanse of the night, the cool breeze whispering through the trees like ancient voices, Vivien knew that the path ahead was fraught with uncertainty. But it was also a path toward understanding, toward reclaiming control over a destiny that had been manipulated by deceit and divine interference. In that profound moment of clarity, the past and the future converged in her mind. The mysteries of the moon goddess, the cursed mate bond, and the betrayal that had once defined her now served as both a warning and a beacon of hope. Vivien realized that the time had come to confront these dark truths head-on, to unravel the intricate web of fate that had long held her captive. And with that, she stepped forward into the unknown, ready to face the lingering shadows of her past, and to forge a future where her destiny would finally be hers to command. Chapter 9. Rise of a New Destiny. In the wake of revelations that had shattered her past and unveiled the dark manipulations of fate, Vivien emerged from the shadows with a resolve as fierce as a wildfire. The journey toward redefining her destiny began not in grand gestures, but in the quiet, unyielding discipline of daily practice. In a hidden clearing, beneath towering pines, and bathed in the early morning light, she stood alone, a solitary figure poised to reclaim her power every. Dawn found Vivien training relentlessly. She honed her body through grueling physical trials, sprinting over rugged terrain, mastering the art of silent movement through the forest, and engaging in fierce sparring sessions against phantom foes conjured by her own will. Each drop of sweat, each strained muscle, was a silent rebellion against the cursed bonds that had once defined her existence. The physical pain became a language through which she conversed with destiny, a dialogue where every scar was proof of her determination to transcend the limitations imposed upon her. One crisp morning, as the first light of day painted the sky in hues of gold and crimson, Vivien paused to catch her breath near a tranquil stream. Her mind, still swirling with the echoes of past betrayals, slowly gave way to a powerful inner dialogue. "I refuse to be defined by the lies of the past," she murmured to herself, the words carrying both defiance and hope. "I am not the rejected, the forsaken. I am the architect of my own fate." In that moment, the sound of her own voice resonated like a battle cry against the cruel hand of destiny. Her transformation was not solely physical. It was a metamorphosis of the spirit. Over time, Vivien began to seek out mentors, wise, reclusive figures who had themselves broken free from the confines of tradition and fate. Among these was an enigmatic elder named Mira, whose piercing eyes and gentle demeanor belied a lifetime of hardship and wisdom. Mira challenged Vivien to confront not only her physical limits, but also the deep-rooted fears that had long chained her spirit. "Your strength lies not just in your arms or your speed," Mira told her during one rigorous training session, "but in the courage to face your own darkness, to conquer the inner turmoil that whispers you are unworthy. Remember, true power is born from overcoming the battle within." Those words struck a chord within Vivien, igniting a new fire in her heart, a fire that burned for freedom and the reclamation of her true self. As the weeks turned into months, Vivien's training evolved into a sacred ritual of self-discovery and renewal. The forest, once a silent witness to her despair, transformed into a canvas upon which she painted a future defined by her own will. Every challenge she conquered, every physical and mental barrier she shattered, built a new foundation of belief. Her inner dialogue grew bolder with each passing day, echoing the sentiments of a warrior forging her own path. In moments of solitude, while the wind whispered through the ancient trees, Vivien would often recall the harsh words of her past, the cruel dismissal by her former mates, the bitter laughter of those who had deemed her unworthy. But now, each memory served as a stepping stone, a reminder of the obstacles she had overcome. "Your past is not your prison," she would say aloud, her voice steady and resolute. "It is the fuel that drives me to rise above and reshape my destiny." Her determination was mirrored in the conversations she had with fellow outcasts and those who had long suffered under the weight of predetermined fate. In one heated discussion with a band of rebels who shared her desire for freedom, a seasoned fighter named Rylan asked, "Do you truly believe that you can break these ancient chains?" Vivien met his gaze unflinchingly and replied, "I don't just believe it. I know it. Every moment of pain has prepared me for this. I will redefine what it means to be bound by destiny." Her words resonated among them, sparking a collective hope that perhaps, together, they could challenge the very fabric of their cursed existence. The breakthrough, however, came one fateful evening when the sky was set ablaze with the colors of a dying day. In the midst of a particularly grueling training session, as Vivien pushed herself to the edge of exhaustion, she experienced a profound moment of clarity. Her mind, usually clouded by the remnants of past betrayals, cleared like the sudden parting of storm clouds. In that transcendent instant, she felt the latent power within her surge forth, a power that was as unpredictable as it was exhilarating. It was as if the very essence of her being was awakening, shedding layers of old pain to reveal a radiant core of unyielding strength. In that climactic moment, Vivien understood that she was no longer the girl defined by rejection and sorrow. she had become something entirely new, a symbol of defiance, resilience, and the relentless pursuit of freedom. The chains of her past were not entirely broken, but they were no longer capable of holding her down. The sacrifice, the relentless training, and the inner battles had all culminated in a rebirth that promised a future where she controlled her own destiny. Standing beneath the star-strewn sky, with the cool night air wrapping around her like a protective shroud, Vivien felt a surge of empowerment unlike any she had ever known. "I rise," she whispered to the heavens, her voice a vow that carried on the wind, reaching the farthest corners of the forest and beyond. In that simple declaration lay the promise of a new era, a future sculpted by her own hands, free from the oppressive dictates of a cursed fate. And so, with each breath and every determined step forward, Vivien forged a path toward a destiny that was entirely her own. One where she was the master of her fate, the architect of a new order that would redefine what it meant to be free.